So everybody's in Quebec, or do we have other
Yeah,
people elsewhere? Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect.
From everywhere in Quebec.
Okay. Well, firstly, cheers. Salut. Okay.
Max, est-ce qu'on commence bientôt? Est-ce qu'il y avait d'autres mondes dans la salle d'attente ou
Non, je pense que tu peux démarrer, Pierre, puis
OK.
présenter Carl.
Yep.
On va débuter. Donc, hey, merci tout le monde de votre présence. Je sais qu'il y a des gens qui vont regarder ceci en diffusion, en rediffusion parce que vous ne pouviez pas être présent ce soir. Mon nom est Pierre-Olivier, côté de Québec Rome. Aujourd'hui, on a un invité bien spécial. Comme d'habitude, on va présenter les différents Roms. Après chaque Rome, il y aura peut-être une petite période de questions à laquelle vous pourrez poser vos questions, soit dans le chat ou soit si vous voulez vous unmuter vos microphones, ça sera possible parce qu'on n'est pas un gros groupe aujourd'hui en direct. Pour les gens qui vont être à la rediffusion, si jamais vous avez des questions, gênez-vous pas pour nous les écrire à Québec Rome et on enverra les questions à Karl et il pourra lui les répondre par la suite. Donc, je vais vous présenter notre invité, Karl Mudzamba, qui est la personne qui est derrière la marque Bira, qui est un nouvel embouteilleur indépendant canadien. Donc, quelque chose qui est très, très rare. Donc, je vais laisser s'introduire. So, Karl, if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself and what is that crazy idea to become an independent bottler in Canada?
Right. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Again, sorry I'm late, but here I am. Okay, so you probably figured by now I love rum, like we all do love rum here. Unfortunately, Canada is a very painful place for people who love rum. What's even worse is us people who live out in the West. You guys, I envy you. You are 3-4 hours from the Caribbean. You can even go for the weekend. So you can solve some of these rum sourcing issues quicker than we do. Anyway, so a little background into how we got to where we are today. So I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm Zimbabwean. I grew up back home. I went to school back home, and I finished when I was young. I used to play rugby, and at one point I ended up in New Zealand. So I went to New Zealand for 2 years when I was playing rugby, but I stayed for 12 years. So I grew up most of my adult life in New Zealand. Up until I didn't drink a lot when I was younger because I used to play rugby professionally. But of course, like most young people, we drink a lot of rum and coke, Bacardi or Captain Morgan's, or Havana Club. So that was all my knowledge to rum per se. And I remember back home, I drank a little bit. Like the only rum we have is almost like a vodka. It's called Mainstay, like a cane spirit, but not much taste. It's just alcohol. You have to mix it with something to make it palatable. So anyway, fast forward a few years, we're talking maybe 2007. So I have a friend I've known for quite a while, and he traveled a lot for work. So he one time, this guy only drank beer. He didn't drink much else. When we were young guys, as you do at the bars, you have shots, and then he would always decline, just beer only. And he phoned me one day. He was in Guyana on the beach, and he said, "You need to try this rum." And of course, I took competition because he never drank any spirits. He only drank beer. So he says, "I'll bring you a bottle." So fast forward a couple of weeks, came back home, and then he brought a bottle of El Dorado 50. Everyone's aware of that one, yeah. Anyway, so that was the rum that led me down this path. Was I remember opening the top, and the aromas were nothing like any rum I'd ever experienced before. I had a sip, and then I got my wife over. I was like, "Try this," and of course, long story short, 3 days the bottle was gone. And then from then, I was always trying to find out what else is out there for rum. So tried many rums since, and then 2011, I'd finished playing serious rugby, and so we used to live in a very small town in New Zealand. I don't know if anyone's been to New Zealand here, in the North Island, in the Hawke's Bay, a little village, like 60,000 people. But I was busy with the rugby, and I traveled a lot around the country, so my wife is from the city back home, so it was a little bit painful for her, just a little bit slow. So when I finished, I was like, okay, let's try a new experience, and then we moved to Canada. So we've been here ever since 2011. We have 3 kids now. They're Canadians, so this is home for a little bit. So we'll see what happens. So now this is year 13 now. It's gone by very quickly. Yeah. So here. Anyway, back to the rum. So coming to Vancouver, we're close to the border, Seattle. So we had more options. Like BC is like Quebec, I'm sure. I think you guys are actually better than us because you actually get some of the, clearance and the rums from Savannah. We don't never see that down here. Um, uh, but the US is close. So I even got like a post box at the border. We'd buy rum because the US is better rum than we do. And I would go get it at the border and bring it across. Sometimes you paid duty, but sometimes you did it. Most of the times you did it because they don't want to do the paperwork. Anyway, over the years, obviously your palate evolves. You try different rums, and at some point, I was like, I need to try and contribute to rum conversations by maybe getting involved in the business some level. My first idea was having a shop, but that is there's a lot of red tape and legislation with that. So in the end, I realized this is not going to do because they don't even issuing new licenses. So you have to buy an existing license, and you need about $500,000 to get that. So that was out of my range. So anyway, I thought, okay, maybe we can be an importer for a brand. So we came close probably about 3 times, but it always stopped at who else do you have in your portfolio? I'm like, no, you'll be the first ones. So so it turns out enthusiasm is not enough, right? So they always want obvious, and I don't blame them. I fully appreciate where they stand, and obviously you don't want to be risking your brand with a rookie. Anyway, so after a few years of this frustration, then I was like, why don't we try and bottle rum like now, like an independent bottle? So I probably researched for about probably close to a year. Because then I figured out you have to find someone with the right license to bottle it and import it on your behalf. And anyway, after a year, I thought this is very possible. So we were like, okay, let's action it. Our first idea was to import a Fiji rum, but unaged Fiji rum. Because in looking around what was happening in the rum, because I'm always like, I've always, been most rum people, like probably most of you guys, is you're always reading information or visiting distilleries, and you're part of online groups. So you're always keeping up with what's going on in the rum world. And I thought that the Fiji unaged was a good one to start because there was only one expression bottled that I knew about by an independent bottler. And that's those guys in France, L'Esprit. I don't know if you guys are aware of them. They have a few expressions, but they bottled one Fiji. It was 80% proof. It was a big rum. I never got to try it, but I was like, wow, they're very brave. But I mean, they're in France, right? The Europeans seem to eat better and drink better than we do, but they have more choice than we do. So when I tried to action that, then my bottler told me you can't import unaged rum. So for rum to be imported in bulk, it has to be aged a year. But if you bring it in bottles, it's fine. So I don't know why it's like that, but it's just some of these rules are from years ago. So that's what. So when I was like, we can't do this, so it was like, okay, why don't we get the aged expression? So the Fiji South Pacific Distillery, they said, oh, we have a few aged ones if you want them. So they gave us a few samples, and we started with the South Pacific. So that was our first expression. 12-year-old aged in the tropics. As far as we know, this is the only one aged in the tropics in North America, because most of the ones across the border are aged partly in the tropics and partly in Europe. So this is like and most of them are pretty old too, probably 18, 17 years old. So this was a good one in the middle. For someone that you find they're like 4 or 5 years old, and then ours is kind of like in the middle by itself, like at 12 years, and then there's like the older ones, like 18, 19-year-olds you find in the US. So yeah, so we started with this one, and This is, I think, probably about almost half of them are gone now in the market. So we sell in Alberta and in BC. We started in Alberta because Alberta is really simple to get into. As when you compare to especially like the SAQs and the LCBOs, where you're having to put bids in and stuff. But over there it's fine, just register and you're in. And also Alberta has the lowest liquor taxes in the Western Hemisphere, I understand. So our rum is a lot more affordable in Alberta. So we're very grateful for that. So, and most of the shops that carry our bottles, they ship countrywide too. So that gets around this problem of having to be in the province. But of course, it would be ideal if you guys could go into a shop and find it there. But we have to work with what we have right now. And yeah, so Fiji was the first one, and then we moved on to the South African. So now our label evolved a bit now. If you can see, there's a little guy on there. And so I'll explain. So I am Shona. That's my tribe or clan, as you want to call it, back home. So the way we've always worshipped over the years is we believe that our ancestor spirits are the link between us, the living, and God. So we have the ceremonies called the Bira. So the idea is to bring the spirits into the household. So with all their families there and extended family in, it's like only happens in darkness, like so from dusk to dawn. And it's really a party. It's a party. There's lots of music, there's dancing, there's lots of booze, alcohol, and there's food. But the link really is the music. The music is it's almost like it's almost like you want to get the spirit mediums into a trance. So some of the older people in the family have that ability to become spirit mediums. So when they hear the music, that starts the process, and then they go into a trance. That's when we know that the ancestor spirit has arrived. So now messages go back and forth now. Maybe there's a couple who need a child, we're trying to get a child, or people need guidance on when they should start planting because most people back home live off the land. So it's always a timing thing because they don't have irrigation. So you have to time it right with the rains. Make sure that you have the best chance of a successful harvest. But the bottom line is that it's a celebration of life more than anything. So we wanted to link our culture to the brand. So every time we issue a rum, we are going to celebrate it with everyone. So that's the link anyway with the brand name. Any questions so far? Yeah.
I think that's very clear for us. So good story, and this is cool to have you with us tonight. So
yeah. Anyway, so do we want to start the serious business of the rum?
yeah, and people don't be shy if you have some question for Karl. So
Yes.
just write in the chat or
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll start with the Fiji. So with the reason we have South Pacific on there, not Fiji, is because that was the requirement of the distillery. We couldn't put Fiji on it, so they said you can put South Pacific, and because the distillery used to be called South Pacific, most people will know where it comes from, but at least not in informal gatherings like this. I can tell you it's from Fiji, but I can't put that on the website or on our social media or anything. But it is from Fiji.
yeah. How many distillery on Fiji? Maybe just one or two?
There's only one.
Only one, yeah.
This is
right.
the only one. Yeah. This one is about 40 years old. So they're at the Fiji, they have two pot stills. So most of the time when they blend before they age, the pot stills, they'll blend 50-50 and they put them in the barrels. They have their own brands, and they have a column still as well. So they do the blend the pot and column for their own brands. So most of their brands are like economy. They compete with the Appletons and the Mount Gays of this world. But the then distiller at the time, he obviously knows what rum he has in stock. So when we came calling, he says, "I think I have something that you might like." So when he sent us the samples, this is pretty good. When I say we, is my other partner is really my wife. She signs all the checks and stuff. So Anyway, we prefer, well, we don't prefer, but we love pot still rums. So this is right up our alley. It's very different to what you're out there. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you. I can tell you what I think is in the rum, but obviously everyone has their own. Their own. It's very subjective processes. What you're smelling, tasting, and stuff. So this was bottled at 55%, 12 years old. It came in at 70, but we brought it down to 55. It's still pretty hefty, but yeah. And I think we had, for this expression, we had 1,272 bottles. So a difference between us and a lot of the independents, a lot of the independent bottlers, especially across the border, they're all single cask independent bottlers. So the yields are probably 300 to 400 bottles for whatever expression they put out. We're just trying to do things a little differently. We were kind of forced into this. Well, not forced, but we had to have minimum volume to go through our bottler, Rock Spirits in St. John's. So, but also the economics make sense because you still got your fixed costs of labels and packaging and everything. So if you're going to put out single casks, like they are 300-400 bottles, it's actually better if you do it yourself because then you can save on the labor and everything. But if I have, like for us, we have to pay for everything else. So it's better we have bigger runs. It makes it a little bit cheaper in the end. So that's why we're not really in the single cask business. But yeah. So what's everyone smelling on this one? Don't be shy.
The smells is a little rubbery, I think. Maybe.
Yep. I get that too.
Maybe some tropical fruits, maybe, but the rubber is maybe too present for me, but I like it.
Yep. So with me, with this rum, I'm not very good with descriptions, but I will tell you in my own words what I think it is. I think this rum has an industrial side, which is, my friend here just said, the rubber and the acetone and stuff. And there's also a fruity side to it. It's like a little bit like some of that Jamaican style, the overripe bananas, a little bit of pineapple on the nose anyway. When you taste it, if anyone's ever had a St. Lucian rum, I'm sure you probably have St. Lucia or a Caroni. I think this is like a love child of a Caroni, a Jamaican pot still, and a St. Lucian rum. Because the St. Lucian rums I find are pretty medicinal. There's some medicinal notes in this one. And then there's a fruity side too, like the overripe bananas you're picking up, and of course the rubber, that kind of like industrial side too. But yeah, in my opinion.
The nose is quite fruity, but the taste is very woody and much less sweet than
Yes.
At the nose. It's quite surprising. We have a few Fiji rum here out by the same bottler, and
Yes.
they're very different from this one.
Right. So also this one, just to add, the fermentation time was 72 hours from memory. So about 3 days fermentation. And of course, yes, then the 12 years of aging. I guess most of these flavors are coming from obviously the fermentation and the pot stills. I'm sure everyone's pretty aware of Actually, it will make. I'll talk about this when we talk about the other rums because it's more relevant to them. But yeah, I was just saying like when you talk about flavor and rum, most of the rum is either fermentation forward or it's aging forward. So these pot still rums are all fermentation forward. That's where most of the flavors are coming from. Versus maybe like Cuban style rums. Cuban style rums are very light because they're distilled to a very high ABV, so they strip away most of their flavors. So they are more aging forward, especially the aged expressions. Like they're getting most of they're using different woods to try and make them more interesting. But I mean the light style still works. There's a rum for each occasion, in my opinion. One day you feel like a pot still rum. Sometimes you just want a light, easygoing rum like a Cuban rum. Yeah. Any questions before we move on to the other ones?
I think you were pretty complete in your explanation, so we don't have a lot of
Okay, cool.
questions.
No problem. Okay, let's move on to the last two expressions. So as I said before, the labels evolve. So every time, so we have new rums coming out, which I can talk about later. But this is going to be the layout for the new ones with the logo and stuff. So anyway, back to these ones. So these are from South Africa, from the Moba distillery. So Moba is about it's like a rising star in the rum world. South Africa is not known for making rum. They're known for brandy and wine. That's where they really have the expertise. So I'm being from Zimbabwe, I know a few South Africans because we share a border with South Africa. And of course, there's a lot of Zimbabweans who live in South Africa that I have known from my previous life. So ever since I talked about these South African rums, they're actually very surprised that there's someone who makes rum in South Africa. And it was like, we didn't know this. So I was like, yeah, this guy is probably better known overseas than he is in his own country. Because most of his product goes to Europe. That's where where most of his sales are. But he's a guy who's learning really fast. To think he's only been in the business for 10 years, I think he's making better rum than a lot of distilleries that have been in existence for a lot longer. Anyway, so with the Mhoba, I find that not just in rum, in spirits in general, people talk about craft a lot. And I think it's an overused term, but this guy is as craft as you get. So they grow their own cane. So some of the cane they send to their sugar mill. They have like it's a sugarcane growing region. It's in the eastern part of the country, northeastern part. They're close to the Mozambican border and close to the Kruger National Park. So if you ever visit South Africa, you can do a safari and go and drink some rum at the Moba distillery if you ever go that way. Anyway, so they grow the cane, and some of the varieties are just for cane production. So they cut the cane. So this guy is an engineer by trade, so he's built all the equipment on that they use. So from the cane crushers to the pot stills, fermentation vats, and then they bottle on site and label everything. So it's a proper grass to bottle operation. And when he makes his cuts, he has to taste and smell each batch that comes off the stills. If he doesn't like it, they return it or they discard it. So it's a very, as you can see, like it's a very manual process, but that's where the craft is. So as a result, it doesn't have a lot of volume because of the way that they actually produce the rum. So everything that that he puts out obviously has his stamp of approval. I know down the line maybe he has to do things differently to increase his output, but for now we get to benefit from his personal touch on each rum that he puts out. So his his style is very influenced by the Jamaicans. They do like really long fermentations. Most of the fermentations start from 7 to up to like 4 weeks fermentation. These rums are at 10 days fermentation for these ones. So you'll find they have a little bit of that kind of fruity Jamaican style going on. And also he does a little things a little different in the way they crush the cane. Some of you probably have been to the West Indies in the French side of things, Guadeloupe, Martinique. You've seen the big crushers they have, like the rolling mills when they crush the cane. When they do that, they want to, because they're all about, well, they have to balance volume and quality, but sometimes they will run, they want to get as much sugar as they can from the cane juice. So they will crush it and maybe add some water to encourage more of the sugar to come out. That's why I find agricoles are some of them are pretty vegetal or grassy, whatever term you want to use it. Our guy, Robert Greaves, for the lack of a better word, they crush using almost like a giant cold press. So he has this big tube that's what they shred the cane and then they throw it in there, and then it's a slow press for 3 hours. So it's a batch style pressing. That's why it's not as grassy as normal agricoles are from the French West Indies. That's how it's not the most efficient way, but that's the way he wants to do it, because he still leaves some sugar in the baguettes, and then they use that to fire the mill and to feed their cattle and stuff, and throw it back into the fields for manure or for nutrients for the soil. So he's quite an interesting guy. He's very hard to get hold of because he's always got his head down in the distillery. When I email him, sometimes I don't hear from him for 3 weeks. He's like, "Oh, sorry, Carl." Then he answers questions. But yeah, he's a proper wizard when it comes to this. He's very much engrossed in what he's doing. Sorry. So anyway, to the rums. So these two rums are the same kind of rums. They're the same. So they're both 4 years old. At the time, these were some of the oldest rums to come out of the distillery. So we were lucky at the time that he had juice available, and he offered some to us, so we took it. Because it's really, I don't know that he'll be able to sell much more in the future because he's getting more popular. So he probably needs to keep the rum for all his brands, his own brands. So as I said, these two 10-day fermentations, they are the same rum. So they use two different casks. So the yellow one, they aged in a South African whiskey cask, and then the green one was aged in a bourbon cask. So for us, for our brand, it was an opportunity to show consumers what the effect of wood on the same juices when you age it. So that was our angle there anyway. So the same rum, just different wood. So the difference is coming from the wood, from the aging process. Any comments on the nose? And yeah.
Very powerful nose in both of them. Different, but very powerful.
Right. Do you have a preference?
The bourbon.
You like the bourbon?
Very fruity, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's much less vegetable that we will get. That's what we get in Martinique
Yes.
rum, French agricole rum.
Yes.
At nose, at least.
You said they were aged in different
Yes.
barrels, but is that the wood that they used to make the barrels were the same? Like South African whiskey and bourbon, is it only from the previous spirit in the barrel that
Yeah,
we'll see the difference in the two spirits, or?
Yeah, they're both oak. They're probably both ex-bourbon too, because as you know, bourbon can only age first fill, right? Or they can only use virgin oak in bourbon, and they have to get rid of them. So most of the people who buy their spirits are rum people. So the South African whiskey, I think that once it firstly had the yellow one, that first had bourbon, and then there's a South African whiskey called Bain's whiskey. Then they bought the whiskey, the cask, and then they put their own whiskey in. I don't know how long, a few times maybe. And then after that is when they put in. He got the cask from the Bain's whiskey guys. This one was just I think it was just an ex-bourbon that he got, and then he aged it in an ex-bourbon, the green one. In my opinion, I find that the South African whiskey one, this is more in tune to the DNA of the distillery with their products, because I've tried some of the unaged expressions and this is more in line with it. I just find that the bourbon cask was very dominant. There's a lot more of, if you compare the two, there's less of that fruity thing going on with in my opinion anyway. I just find that there's a lot more bourbon notes than I think the South African whiskey gave to the rum.
Is there anything specific to the South African whiskey? Is it like a regular whiskey, or it's like Scotch is often smoked, or is there any requirements to call it a South African whiskey? Is there any?
No, I think it's, to be honest, from what I know, my limited knowledge of South African whiskey, is more just freestyle. They're not as regulated as Scotch and
Okay.
stuff. They just distill grain and throw it in the barrels, as far as I know. I could be wrong, but yeah. They're not incumbent by the Scotch, the specifications and stuff. Anyway. Sorry, Maxime, you're asking, have I visited yet? No, actually. Next time I go home, I'm going to pass through.
Interesting. So I've read an article from our friend Evor about this his travel to this distillery with Eric K. So
Yes,
very
yes, yes.
interesting paper. I probably have here, so I can share with all the groups. So if you have sometimes after today, so not reading that live. So but after this, it's very interesting to go inside the distillery.
Yeah,
Read too, yeah.
That's a well-written one, yeah. It gives
Yeah,
you a
good
good idea.
article from Ivar. So I not read in 1 hour, so my English is not perfect. So I
Sure.
take more time, but very very cool to read all that.
Yes. I'll give you another link. This is more in depth into the processes of MOBA.
Okay,
It was written by Stephen James. He's a blogger he's a rum writer in the UK, but he talks about the expressions and their processes as well.
okay.
On that, it's really good. I'll just find it one thing.
Do you know? I have a question for you. Do you know the year MOBA was founded? Because I remember when we was in Paris in 2018. So I think MOBA was there, but I'm not sure if MOBA was there. Probably in the
He
dans les premières années là, la compagnie était fondée là.
He's about 10 years old now. I think he officially got his license in 2014 officially.
Oh,
But
okay.
he'd been playing with rums. He'd been playing with different. He'd been playing around with the fermentations and building pots, and he's still experimenting at that stage. But yeah,
Yeah, it's logical for me. Yeah.
yes. One second, I just gotta get this for you guys. One second. There's a couple of articles he wrote. That's a good one too if you have time.
You said you lived in New Zealand and Zimbabwe, New Zealand, and then to Vancouver?
Yeah, so actually, I lived in Australia first, but it wasn't for long,
Okay.
for about a year. I played rugby there too, and then I went to New Zealand, and for 2 years I stayed for 12, and then 2011 we came over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is rum a popular spirit in South Africa and New Zealand, Australia? How's
New,
the market up there? Or
New,
down there, I should say.
yeah, New Zealand, from what I saw, wow, I didn't, like I said, I only got into rum towards probably the last few years of my stay there. But like most places, the most consumed rum is the mixing ones, like the big brands like the Bacardis and the Captain Morgans and the Appletons and stuff. So you see those. But after my experience with my encounter with El Dorado 15, I started to look, and I was finding stores that had specialist rum that we were after. So they have their own kind of communities like we do here of people of rum enthusiasts, right? And Australia, obviously they have the climate too to grow the sugarcane, because New Zealand is pretty temperate and mostly cold, so sugarcane won't do well there. But Australia has the right climate for sugarcane, and they have a few distilleries that that are quite prominent these days that people talk about. Aside from Bundaberg, they have Beanley and a few other craft distilleries that are opening it up.
But what Mobaz is producing, is it mostly for South Africa or is it mainly for export?
He has some like lower level expressions, mostly for mixing, that he releases into the market, and then some premium expressions he provides for like the whiskey stores. But most of his market is in Paris. In France, not Paris. France is where he sells most of his premium expressions go to Paris, because he has a contract with La Maison. What's it? Oh, I forget the second name. La
Maison de Whiskey.
Du Whiskey, yes.
Yeah.
He has a contract with them. So every time he bottles something, he sends it up there.
Yeah, it's a big buyer there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. He's almost got like a cult following there. And of course, here we got some juice, and then Eric K across the border. They're helping raise his profile in North America.
Without saying those two are pretty different from each other there.
Yeah.
The different barrels, the different barrel kind is changing pretty much the taste. I wouldn't guess though it's the same spirit coming from two different barrels.
Yeah. A lot of people say that to me too. Like they almost in disbelief that it's the same spirit that went into the barrels.
And you're right. The second one, the bourbon cask, is very at the front.
Right.
When you
Yeah. Yeah, right. And we are more familiar with the second one too, because of the aging in bourbon cask.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's more familiar notes compared to the first one.
Yes.
It's more grainy. It's very interesting to have both and compare to.
Yeah.
And what next to you? So I think you have a new project on the
Yes.
new reference.
So a new one.
You can talk with us about that.
Yeah, definitely. So we in the next couple of months we're gonna bottle 3 drums. So one of them is from Venezuela. It's from the same distillery that Santa Teresa comes from. It's a 15-year-old alpha column still, and aged fully in Venezuela. So we got that, and then we have 2 coming from. They were aged in France, but they're from Père Labat distillery in Guadeloupe. So they spent they're all aged in Europe entirely. About 7 years old that they are. They're all aged in cognac casks, but there's two versions. So one of them spent the last like 6-7 months in a Balcones whiskey cask. So it's going to be a little bit like these two expressions where you have like a double bottling, but the difference obviously is coming from the new, like if you want to call it a finish in a bourbon cask, but they're mostly aged in cognac. So we managed to get that. So that's our next project. Hopefully in the next 2 months. I was hoping to be ready by now, but these things take time. Would have sent you guys some.
It's not a problem. So we can plan a new night with you. So
For sure. For sure. Yeah. For sure.
Canadian people always love rum. So you have new rum?
Yes.
Just tell us.
Definitely. Yeah, we are trying. We're trying to improve the landscape for rum in our own way here. It's a small way, but small steps, right? So, hopefully the fire catches on and more people do it, and we have better options for all of us around here.
Small step, but a long run. So
Yes.
a long journey.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Any questions? Everyone's happy?
So we don't seem to have a lot more questions, but thanks for all the information you shared with us, and we will be checking what you will propose us in the future. It will be interesting.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Max, and put it, and thank you. Yes, as soon as I get the new ones, I'll send a package to Max here, and we can have another night hopefully. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yes. Thanks to you, Karl. And before we leave, so people just have maybe prefer rum tonight, or if you want to write it in the chat, you prefer a 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's an interesting
Definitely.
bag
Let's
for
see.
Karl. So which Quebec rum people love which rum? So
Yeah.
Mine is the number one you put on the bottles, which is the South African South African whiskey cask.
Nice.
I like the nose of the bourbon cask a lot, but the taste of the other one is better.
The other one's better. Yeah. Fair enough.
Taste, of course.
Nice.
Well, for me, the best one was the one aged in South African whiskey barrels.
Yeah.
I think it's the taste is and the smell is more lively than the one aged in bourbon cask.
Right.
And when you smell your empty glasses, you see that the bourbon has its influence on it. It smells wood.
Yeah.
And the South African one, I would have guessed for an agricole rum in it, because it's more fruity.
Yes.
The first one we tasted, the South Pacific one from the Fiji, although it's a bit less alcohol, just 55 instead of 56, but I found it maybe a bit harsh because of the alcohol.
Yeah.
And I didn't smell the rubber. The rubber smell Guillaume had, but the pineapple was really what came out more than the others. Yeah. they're all good. But honestly, the Asian South African whiskey cask is my first. Yeah.
Nice. I guess it's mostly the cane juices that are more popular, right? From the sounds of it.
You're
And I don't
surprised?
know for you others, if you smell your empty glasses, the one from South Pacific, it smells a bit like the moist cardboard.
Yeah, I get that too. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So if anyone no more questions, so we can leave Carl and pass some time with our kids. So it's
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
Rum is important, but family too. So
Yeah, yeah.
thanks to have shared your time with us tonight. It's very appreciated. And if you come to Quebec City, so just give a message to me, and I
Sure.
can
And bring
organize
bottles.
something.
I'll bring bottles for sure.
Yeah, bring bottles. Bring new bottles.
Yes.
And if we have the new one, so you can just tell us. Maybe a couple of us will buy it. So
Sure.
it's
Thank you.
good to appreciate, and it's a nice thing to encourage you and buy your products. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
important.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I mean I'll give you our site, but like when we bottle the new ones, I'll send you guys the bottles before they go to market, and you guys can share them amongst you guys, you know. But here's our site. Like if you feel like you need to get some, there's a way to buy on there, and you can find it there. But yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers.